violence. This is still one of the most common grounds of separation of marriages in the Philippines.
There are women out there who are suffering from marital violence. I don't know if it's culture or if it is economics or it is still the macho society that is present in the Philippines.
And remember, because of that macho society, not only the women get hurt, but also the men. Men get hurt and men can cry too, you know.
I know, right?
I agree. So whether you're a man, a woman, or anything in between, you have the right to fight back.
Ano ba sinasabi? Pinapaliwanag ako! Ano? Ha? Sinasabi ako? Ano ka ba? Nasisiraan mo mo! Hindi ka ba nasasawa sa pambubugbog ko?
So, Dean, what exactly is domestic violence?
Well, domestic violence, or we call it violence in the Philippines, under Republic Act 9262, or the Violence Against Women and Children, it is considered as an act or a series of acts committed against a woman who is his wife, a former wife, or a person who has had a relationship, sexual relationship, or dating relationship, or if they had a common child, or if they have a legitimate or illegitimate child. And this violence would be constituting psychological violence, physical violence, economic abuse, and of course, we have also sexual violence. And it may also even amount to harassment, battery, and all the other acts as defined under the law.
Oh, so it's not just physical violence. Kasi I think most Filipinos think now, when you say domestic violence, it's just the physical.
Not necessarily physical. We have sexual violence. We also have psychological violence and economic violence or economic abuse.
So, anong example nun? Let's say psychological violence.
Okay. I think tama yung sinabi mo, Ms. Flo, no? When people hear about violence, they automatically equate it with somebody who's hurt physically, diba? Pero like we said earlier, even men get hurt, but not physically. Kasi there are other ways. So, like psychological violence, right? When you say psychological violence kasi, it causes some sort of mental or emotional suffering. Pero, marami kasing forms yun. A lot of things could hurt a person. But when you're in that type of relationship, katulad ng sabi ni Dean, you could be, the woman could have been your wife or somebody you dated. In-stalk mo ngayon, hinaras mo.
Especially
diba?
uso ngayon in Facebook or
and all sorts of social media.
Right.
Diba? Wala ka mang ginawa physical dun sa babae na yon o with whom you had a relationship before, but that could be considered as psychological violence under RA 9262.
Right, okay. Parang yung mga psychological manipulation din.
Pwede rin.
Yes.
Kasi the psychological violence is such a broad term, you know. It encompasses kung ano yung mental na nararamdaman mo or verbal abuse, for example.
Right.
Hindi ka man hinawakan. Hindi ka hinawakan, pero sinasabi sa'yo kung ano-ano on a daily basis.
Makes you feel small,
Or
makes you feel
via
harassed.
phone, for example, via phone. So, all those things are actually constitutive of psychological violence.
And sometimes, akala mo it just happens in the movies. Pero in real life, it really exists. I have personal experiences with my clients who had a problem with the husband who was committing psychological violence against her person. So this causes her harm that she cannot even concentrate on what she does in the school and what she does as a teacher and for their children also. And many women suffer in the homes because of the psychological abuse by the husband or a boyfriend, former boyfriend, for instance.
Kahit simpleng pagmumura.
Yes.
Simpleng pagmumura.
Emotional.
Or malakas na boses lang
Malakas
marinig
na
nila.
boses, actually.
This can affect their psychological being. And this has an impact on the way they conduct their day-to-day activities.
As wife, as a partner, as whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's psychological abuse and
Yeah.
then there's also economic abuse. Ano
Oh, yeah.
naman yung economic abuse?
When you say economic abuse, kasi when people hear economics, parang whoa,
parang ano
big
yun?
word, right? Big word. Pero basically, when you say economic abuse, you make someone dependent on you and you use that against them. That's like the layman's understanding. So, for example, in the house, the most common scenario sa Filipinos, walang asawa si wife, the wife takes care of the children, the husband provides. So, pag sinabi economic violence, ang sinabi ni wife, naku honey, kailangan ko ng pambili ng diaper ni Junior. Sinabi, hindi, ayoko, magsayaw ka muna. Diba? And also,
Yes, that's correct.
if the woman wanted to say pursue, hindi nakatapos, tapos sabi, honey, baka naman pwedeng paaralin mo ako kasi ikaw lang yung nakapag-aral. Ayoko. Hindi pwede. Dito ka lang sa bahay, you have to take care of our child. Okay? While it's very noble to take care of your child, you're not actually suggesting anything that is wrong, pero that could be a form of economic abuse kasi wala kang choice
Yes. And speaking about children also, the common feature also of economic abuse in the Philippines is when you have a common child, for instance, when you have a legitimate or illegitimate child, kung hindi ka magbibigay ng support, that may also constitute as an economic abuse.
Kasi the law
Yes.
itself punishes violence against women and children.
Right.
So
Yes.
the economic abuse could actually be directed towards the child na
Yes.
ikaw hindi ka nag-support. Kasi there are cases din, I think, there are cases na sabi ng babae, wait, I'm strong. I don't need support from any other man dahil nasaktan
Strong,
ako noon.
independent woman.
So yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Strong, independent. But still, you're obliged to support because you're the father. And if you don't provide support, you could actually fall under economic abuse.
Yes, so that's correct.
Okay. Alright, so you mentioned also kanina yung sexual abuse. Ano naman yun, Lin?
Yes, sexual abuse, this is done against the wife or against the children inside the home. So in fact, we have heard during this pandemic that the
Rates.
number of women and children abused inside their homes is higher at this time.
Right,
And this
yeah.
is sexual abuse. And I think this is where women should really go out and speak out. But sometimes what limits the women to go out and report these abuses is because of the psychological abuses of the partner or the husband.
Or the stigma din.
The stigma.
You know, the
The-
usual,
Yes.
the usual scenario in a sexual abuse situation would be, obligasyon mo yan eh. So you should give it to me. Pero technically, if the woman says no, whether or not you're married, hindi ka pwedeng pilitin. General rule yun. Hindi ka pwedeng pilitin kung ayaw mo.
In fact, there can be marital rape.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Right. There could be marital rape. So,
Yes.
sexual abuse could actually happen even when you're married. So,
Right.
Yes.
just because you say na it's an obligation doesn't mean you can enforce it on anybody. For sure, if you were the guy, ayaw mo rin i-enforce sa'yo. So,
Tama.
the same scenario goes with women who are unwilling or not unwilling but are input in a situation na kahit ayaw nila, napipili.
So there are really women, for instance, the Supreme Court even recognizes
Woman syndrome.
battered woman syndrome, where it could be a cycle.
Yeah.
It could happen as a cycle to a woman na ngayon mawawala, bukas meron ulit.
Oh, since we're on the
Ganyan.
topic kasi that's
So
that's a
I
concept
think
in law.
that's a common experience among women and of course children in their household.
Yung after silang ma-abuse, the battered woman syndrome basically, abuse ka ngayon, whether physical, especially physical. And then after nun magsusorry.
Right.
Tapos magliligawan na, ay,
Tapos ayan
pasensya
na
ka na,
naman.
honey. And then uulit na naman uli. That's why it's called battered woman because you're so
Hindi na alam.
abused that you make it a habit to say okay and then go back again.
Yeah.
That's actually under the RA 9262.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Pero si RA
9262.
9262 covers married people lang or pati yung hindi kasal?
No, sinasabi nga natin earlier, it can be between a married couple and as regards their children, but also as regards persons who had dating relationships.
Kahit naka-date mo na.
Halimbawa,
Actually,
yung dating dating relationship mo or sexual
relation.
relationship mo, well, pwedeng mangyari yon and pwedeng maging liable also. And
And even same-sex relationships, right?
Yes. Oh.
Yes.
Same
For
sex,
here-
but the woman only. For
Yes.
like for woman to woman relationship or like
What if
lesbian.
man-to-man? So, hindi siya covered.
So
it's not
may
covered.
may mga laws,
Unfortunately.
may mga laws din
oo.
naman tayo na na nagpo-provide dyan, especially those laws under the revised penal code.
But it's not there. It's not in the RA.
RA.
There's no such law as violence against men yet. There's no such law yet.
And
But
there-
there are other laws that protect the rights of men.
Yes, that's actually a contentious issue because there are many men who are asserting that there must be rights for violence against men also, considering that
Gender roles. Gender roles
as you
have
said
changed.
earlier,
Yeah.
men or boys do cry as well, right?
And gender roles have changed. Ngayon, there are what we call, for example, house bands. There are house bands.
Exactly.
Wherein the women, actually, they consider it quite degrading to be called a house band. But a wife would actually consider it a noble purpose to be called a housewife. So gender roles have actually
But we
changed.
also have to admit that there are women who are very strong.
Yes, and
there are two
And there are
liberated.
husbands that are proud of being
Yes,
husbands.
I mean,
Yes.
it's just that circumstances put them in a situation that the woman earns.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So the problem is, syempre, if you are put in that situation, even the man experiences all the forms of violence that were put in the law.
Yes.
Exactly.
And-
Yeah, that's why I'm asking kanina, paano pag ikaw yung man and ikaw yung na-abuse?
But it
So
doesn't.
what kinds of remedies?
Yes, that is what we are also saying, that it doesn't mean that you have no remedy in the law. So we
It's
have
just that, I think, Dean, medyo, if you're a man, okay, and you experience all those abuse from a woman, the society, as taboo kasi, tells you not to say anything about it because you're a man, for one.
and in the same way that this violence against women and children law was enacted because of
Tinatago,
women and
yeah.
children
Society,
also,
oo.
and in consideration of the rights of women in this particular instance.
Baka
But
matiisin. Alam mo yun? Yung,
Yeah, we know that in general.
they're more vulnerable
Yes, exactly.
to
Women
this
and
particular
children
abuses.
are really more vulnerable.
Yes.
Pero
pag men,
pag men, papaano?